The big one is simply keeping a roof over the family's head, and then the bills would come into play.
The struggle to keep up with home payments from those on the verge of facing eviction. Tonight we want to take an in-depth look at issues those facing evictions face and how it affects other parts of our community.
So you may be asking yourself, why are we talking about this now? Well, because for some, it's becoming more and more of a reality. One of the key causes, federal relief money drying up. The Treasury Department estimates $7 billion remain of the $46 given in aid during pre-pandemic era protections. There's also rising rent prices clashing with a tight housing market. Costs have slowed, but they remain 9% higher on average compared to last year. Kansas City, on the lighter end of that spectrum, reporting a 6.6% increase since 2021. But some of those financial woes also putting more pressure on area shelters. In fact, earlier this week, we talked with workers at Shelter KC, pinning inflation as a factor for those struggling to get back on their feet.
People who are homeless used to only be homeless for 2-3 weeks at a time, get a job and out of homelessness. Now you have people who have been homeless 3 or 4 years. And I think that length is really the increase.
It's a concern that's ballooned over the pandemic. Check this out. You can see that steady decline moving up right there. Having it trending upward during the CDC moratorium, that's what's reflected closer to that historical average, which is the gray line you see there. In 2022, multiple months reached or crossed over that threshold, that average, reaching as high as 140%, Kevin.
And with evictions on the rise, a local nonprofit offering a funding program that could help residents offset some of that debt. KSHB 41's Grant Stevens shows us how the hope it's giving struggling tenants.
100, 150.
Derica McDaniel is adding up her monthly costs.
$30, yes.
Every dollar counts.
And you don't want your children, even in other situations, a husband, a wife, you don't want to let the family down.
She's one of hundreds of people CHES, or Credit and Homeownership Empowerment Services, has helped in the last few months.
The folks we encounter is, I lost my job during COVID, or I'm behind a couple months, my lights are off.
Program Director Jordan Cook says the nonprofit helps mediate between landlords and tenants behind on payment and connects them to funding to help them catch up, keeping families from being evicted.
It's just really important to make sure that you have home together when everything else seems like it's falling apart.
But there is a problem on the horizon. One of the funding streams that this nonprofit and others like it used just recently dried up. And that program was fast and basically allowed them to quickly cut checks to landlords. That's forced them to fall back on another existing program called SAFER, which works but takes much longer, keeping those checks just out of reach.
I think we're on the cusp of seeing a spike in numbers of evictions.
Landlord and tenant attorney for CHES, Rachel Foley, says if it takes too long, landlords already stretched thin by the tail of the pandemic may start filing more evictions over the holidays.
It's very tough.
Foley says there is hope, though. The SAFER program has plenty of money still, so if people like McDaniel reach out soon enough, families stay together.
Ensures that we'll have a roof over our heads to be able to enjoy those holidays together as a family should be able to do.
In Kansas City, Grant Stevens, KSHB 41 News.